chance to look at it. Comments, corrections, changes? I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Recap the thermal energy networks workshop. How many of you went to that after our last meeting? 3 of us.
Debbie was there.
So, what would you like to share from your experience there?
Very interesting.
I think of the library, the library wanting to do a remake of our town green, and it's right next door to the school and right across the street from three public buildings.
Yeah.
That maybe it's an opportunity
Yeah.
for our town. That was the one piece I picked up. I have 800-foot deep water well at my house, and I thought, gee, can I run a pipe down and back up? And I asked that question. They said that they really don't like to have hot water running alongside cold water systems because the heating water coming into your house could lead to contamination. Sad. You already have an 800-foot deep.
Yeah.
Why not use it?
Yeah, for me, the most compelling thing, so Champlain College, and you may have heard this, but Champlain College, as they were building new buildings the last decade, which they certainly have done, for each building they built, they would put in one of these thermal networks. So the idea is you drill down really far, and then you can bring up, I guess, below the frost line, the temperature is always 50 degrees, so you can bring up water and start off warmer than you would be without it, and then they do heat pumps and other things like that. But so Champlain College, every time they build one of those buildings, they build a network bigger than just that building, and they support like the neighboring building. So over the years, I mean, we've all seen what they were building over there, the college. So with each of those new buildings, they could move a couple of buildings, too. I always want to call it geothermal, but whatever it is.
Geothermal.
Yeah, what do they call it? Yeah, thermal. They call them thermal energy network. Yeah. So.
Yeah, my earlier experience with geothermal energy had been volcanic, and the area on the side of a volcano in Guatemala where they had developed a system. The heat of the volcano moved to another place, so that they had a plant that was getting about 10% of the efficiency that they had planned for. But to see that in a developing country when we haven't taken very much advantage of it here, as far as I know, it's just interesting.
The folks that organized that presentation want to keep getting together and kind of talking about it and planning it. So they asked if anyone from the housing committee was interested in participating in those meetings. And I think the next one is going to be July 2nd at either noon or 4. So if anybody is interested, let me know.
So you're saying their goal is to just educate as many people as possible.
They want to actually start planning for like doing it somewhere, and so I mean, the libraries, they're going to be doing excavation over there. It might someday might be a good place for a pilot project at least, or half corners somewhere. But yeah, it's going to take a lot of planning and scheming and whatnot. So they want to keep moving forward.
It's a very long-term thing.
Yeah.
Anything else from that? Then housing trust fund outreach. Debbie was working on a draft press release. What we got in the pre-press articles, Observer article, I should be Observer article by Jason was such a good outreach. It seemed to me that
Mhm.
Now we need to be at a little bit different level than that. We need to be saying to people, targeting the kind of people that would be looking for that assistance, and I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's other, besides the Observer article, you could do a press release that would just go to, some other, either papers or like, Vermont Housing Finance Agency or, partners like that, or Front Porch Forum. So, yeah, I was working on this, draft press release, but the Observer article was like, it was really good, I thought. And so if anybody wants to, take the article and kind of craft like a more general press release from that, that might be something that.
Somebody interested in doing that?
Are we pursuing media for the sake of targeting people who would actually make use of it, or are we also interested in just like media for the sake of media?
I think that at this point, we probably want to target people that can use it, but that could be a minority opinion. Don't take my opinion as being more important than anything else.
Yeah, so.
Well, probably good to keep educating people because not everybody will see the article. And we had our parent group meet and I explained some of it, but there were 4 people there who hadn't seen the article, so
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out like how wide to cast our net essentially.
yeah.
That's a great question.
I mean, it is, limited to folks who live in Williston, so,
Right.
keep that in mind. But
I don't know if it benefits us as a committee or a town just to let people know, even if they specifically can't make use of it.
I think so.
Yeah, I see a couple things we can communicate in that way. Like, one thing I run up against is that when people hear about developers, they're going to do the payment in lieu rather than affordable housing. People are, then why do we have these rules if they're going to go around it? But I think we all agree that that kind of trust, that money could be used for 30% or 40% housing. Affordable housing that we put on our builders is like 80 to 120%.
Yeah.
And then,
80 to 100.
yeah, okay. But anyway, that still leaves out a huge part of our population. So I think it's a very strong message to say, well, there's segments of the population that are served by that, but there's also, I guess for anyone below 80% where we don't have anything for right now, but maybe with this trust fund we could have.
No, that's not, certainly if a building that was available at 60%, that would count. It's not.
Oh, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, if a builder want to come, yeah. Okay, yeah. But I think as a housing committee, we generally would like to see housing to address all of our population. I always go back to, we have 7,000 retail workers here in Williston that came out of the a town report, that we sort of de facto ask to leave every day, come workforce, but leave in the evening and go work farther. So I always think in terms of like, can we have these folks because they're part of our community, they're contributing. A lot of our town revenues comes from what they're doing. So that's how I think about it. But to your point, yeah, I think there are 2 things. There's letting potential folks that come in. And then there's sort of better, communicating to the town that we are thinking about housing, even though we can't like we want all of it. And beneficiaries, I think the question would be, would they most often come to Crystal Lee, come to somebody, one of the organizations first, and then we'd be routed to that through that, or would, do people come here to town hall and say, I have a problem?
Well, certainly with the housing retention, I think it would be important to target those partners who work with that population, like, Chris Lee certainly, and CDOEO, and COTS, and that's where the letter, I have this letter that I drafted that to send to those folks. If you want to look at it, I don't know if you got a chance to look at it. But
Yeah, no, I liked it. letter, and it's a very detailed, but actually for the COTS people, it probably.
I
Where
know
they
that,
from?
that Habitat for Humanity has a hard time finding people.
I've heard that.
And we actually probably can put people in housing that are below 60% of the median income. Actually, because of some funding that comes through Champlain Housing Trust,
Mhm.
state funding that comes through Champlain Housing Trust. We've sold houses at levels that would be affordable at 45% or 40%
Wow,
of the median
that's
income.
amazing.
Well, it's because of that money coming in.
That's
from
so
the
sweet,
state.
yeah.
We're building houses for $240,000
Mm.
and selling them. We sell them to Champlain Housing Trust for that, and they take the money they have and put with it and sell it to the homeowner for $125,000. Or there's different levels.
Mhm. And those are permanently affordable, yeah, I mean, I see all sorts of value in that.
Their shared equity program, right? So they essentially own the land, right? And then they.
Yeah, what Habitat was doing, the financing with zero interest mortgages, we couldn't take advantage of that state money, but we just capped the return at 25% of the market rate return. So if a house was appraised at $300,000 and sold for $100,000, when they sold the house, it would be reappraised. If it was reappraised at 400,000, the growth would be 100,000.
Mhm.
They could sell it for 125,000, 25% of that growth. Plus, they'd get back everything.
Yeah, they get back everything they put in and some percent of it, yeah, it's a very nice program.
So perpetual affordability has been an important part of both the Champlain Housing Trust and Habitat's programs.
This is not a fully formed idea, but my mind went to Williston Food Shop as an entity that would have access and knowledge to potential beneficiaries, because I think you're supposed to prove that you live within Williston. You're encouraged to, or
They serve,
Two different, they serve Williston St.
kind of
George,
big
they'll
place to
provide
put
food for people. in
Okay.
Williston, so.
but still, they would know.
Yeah.
I'm guessing a lot of people, choose either to pay rent and then get food for free because the money's going to rent, or vice versa. Like, I could just see that being someplace to
Yeah.
really access that.
Yeah.
Might be too if we if we do another press release or whatever, that if we mentioned that, you can access this also through CDO,
Yeah.
COTS or whatever.
There's so little money in the fund, it's frustrating.
Yeah, oh, in their town fund, yeah.
Well, all the more reason to get it out now.
Yes.
I think that's a good idea. That might be where a family in crisis
Yeah.
is gonna show
Yeah.
up first in the system.
And yet I don't know exactly what that should look like, how best to harness that, but just having that as a resource that we should definitely.
They might know to.
Yeah.
And also maybe Department of Children and Families. Right here in Williston.
Yeah. Any other ideas on outreach?
Does the town itself have a vehicle, such as town newsletter or on their website, where you'd be able to utilize that to let people know?
We could put it on the homepage for a while, like, there's, if I go here, like right now, they've got the Williston Town Band 2025 schedule.
You're in there,
We're not-
Charlie?
we're not gonna kick that.
But I
I'm on
mean,
the
things
board.
kind of rotate,
Yeah.
and so then it's or- so-
Know that I should know. It's on social media.
What was that?
Yeah,
Social media.
sort of, but
Yeah.
we
The
don't use
planner, yeah. I mean,
But even still,
planning.
I just think
it works.
the algorithm, if we tap into whatever
Yeah.
algorithm, it's going to be able to target people in a geographic area.
That's right.
Planners Corner, We are gonna do like a housing trust fund FAQ, so that has like, I think there's at least 500 people it gets distributed to, but maybe more. But yeah, you know, I don't use our Facebook page that much, but like, maybe like there's a town Facebook page and then there's a planning and zoning Facebook page, so maybe the town Facebook page. would be-
Yeah.
Twenty Park Sports Forum is one that
That's been-
has definite boundaries.
Yeah.
That has to be from the point of view of a potential person to ask it and be very concise. So.
My guess is that that does a better job reaching the town than, I mean, clearly the Observer goes to every mailbox in town. But I would hate to try to guess the percentage of readership.
It's an interesting question. Yeah.
I've always read it in cover to cover. I grew up in the age of newspapers.
Mhm.
Well, now it's like, do you get it that week or do you get it the next week?
Yeah.
For the past month and a half, I've been getting regular Thursdays.
My mail's pretty good usually.
Still since COVID, I just said this to somebody.
It was a long time.
Sometimes we get it three
Yeah.
weeks in a row and the mail comes every day and then they'll stop for a month and then it'll get 3 times every 2 weeks and once a week and.
I go out for coffee every Friday morning to a place that has it, so that if I don't get it on Thursday.
Oh, you go grab it.
But again, I don't know what the readership is. Opposed to getting free papers.
Well, the other thing is, especially if they have a digital version of it, you can then use it in a social media post. So you can expand the outreach, on that. So you can use it, in an email you send out to people if you have a list. So it has legs beyond who picks up that paper and reads it. So even if it's 10%, you can then add to that.
But we need to take advantage of whatever's available.
Yeah.
Because it's only 10%, just says we need to keep reaching out to go beyond.
That's
What
right.
about putting it in
Yeah.
the articles? Everybody in town can say,
Maybe, but
That's, yeah, that's
What's
gonna be
that?
land properties. Landlords who would receive that, right? Tenants.
Is there any way to, like, that any of the low income developments?
Oh,
me?
yeah, CHT, definitely, because they might have folks that are behind on rent.
The other ones are all senior housing.
Yeah, senior housing, perhaps.
That is an interesting angle, though. I hadn't considered specifically reaching out to landlords and saying like, hey, if you
Yeah.
have tenants who like are conveniently behind.
They're gonna be the ones getting the money.
Yeah.
So they should have an interest. But, would somebody or some folks be willing to create some like social posts? Yeah.
I do it all day, every day. Why not?
is that your profession?
Nonprofit communication and marketing. So. No, that's not solid waste district.
Okay.
Northwestern, what?
Solid waste district.
Northwestern.
Yeah. So.
That's the one north of us?
Yeah, it's combined Grand Island, Franklin County. So like Chittenden District is just Chittenden County, but because the population is so small, they combine those two counties into just one district.
That's what Habitat did too, you get Franklin, Grand Island County.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're combined.
Anything else on?
Well, I'll rewrite the press release. You had that. You had asked that earlier on, and you had the draft you did. Plus, there was so I can work those.
Okay.
But press releases to other organizations are like 2 pages or something. Like
What page?
1 page. Okay.
Or it's like-
All right.
And then, did you get a chance to look at some of the materials I posted on the website? No.
Oh,
The draft release I
I think I
read.
did, but
Oh, there's letters to partners.
This stuff, the, basically, I wish there was a less clunky way to do that, and I will see if I can find out, but basically, so it's pretty short, and then you click on either one of these, and it just gives you some instructions. Basically.
So did you change that? Were you able to change that form?
Yes. You did.
I recently went through some bureaucratic forms of my refugee connection. Oh my God. You know, it's like, and so I told her that like, if someone already has like a letter from Burlington Housing or something or another, like, okay, you're in. Like, you know, if you talk to any of these other agencies, we don't need your tax. So I suggested a way to say like,
you're gonna do the press release.
yeah, I can.
Or are you just adapting this one to make it snappier?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm combining that one with the Observer article. I'm assuming the target audience is like other organizations. So that's different than,
That's about partners though.
no, maybe you're right.
Yeah.
And also feel free if you want, if you want to work on that too.
That doesn't
Well,
hurt.
that would be more, what he wrote was pretty good.
I don't know.
I'm gonna play around with it a little.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you're willing to look at all those things, you sound like you're the real writer here.
Anything else?
I was gonna say it'd be good to send out to us at least
Yeah.
something that we could post to front porch forum or.
Yeah, and let me make one point, because I do outreach events like crazy, you probably do some too, right? And you're not always speaking directly to that person that's gonna, right? Matter of fact, most of the time, you're not. It's probably a small percentage of any outreach that you do, right? But as long as you're educating someone who then knows that this is happening, that this is available, that's right.
Yeah.
And when they talk to someone who can say, "Do you know about this?" Honestly, that's your outreach, right? So don't get too focused on, well, we can't, like you just said, get it to partners, get it to anyone in the town who's going to have the opportunity to pass it on, you know, to make sure that they can refer. Those referrals are where you're going to get probably more than anything. So.
And that made me think of, well, Debbie had mentioned churches, but then I thought, what about the schools?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know, I'll go sometimes and there'll be 4 people there and someone says, "I'm so sorry." I see my motto has been, I'll go anywhere to talk to anyone at any time. Now, I've been at Home Share Vermont 2.5 years. The fiscal year before I got there, they did 4 outreach events. This year we're going to do, so far, done that plan for June 30th will be 103.
Wow.
103 from 4 just to.
Do you do them all?
I do about 75 to 80%. That's right. And, you know, so there was one weekend a few weeks ago, I was in Bristol, then East Randolph, then Bristol on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And, you know, luckily you just had Williston. So, you have, you know, a finite area,
Right.
but it's still going to be hard to find, you know, exactly who you need to talk to. But everybody who gets to know what you have available is going to be a help for you. So don't lose sight of that.
The money that we have, we're talking about 2 or 3 or 4 people out of 10,000 or whatever we have
Yeah.
in town now. And to try to $40,000 to spend this year. So rather than try to figure out who those people are and target them, it's a matter of getting the word out so that they can recognize themselves.
That's
Anything else? It's a good segue into home share Vermont.
Yes, it is. Well, you've talked about two things that were really important. One is, keeping people in homes here in Williston. And then the other is to be able to provide housing to those employees who work here and you'd like for them to be part of your community. And so we do that in a very specific way. So home sharing is someone offering room in their home for rent or help or a combination of the two. And the guest is someone who's looking for an affordable place to live. And so we've been doing this for 43 years in Vermont. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see where we are now. 43 years ago, it was a few volunteers in Burlington who got this idea. There was a program that started out in the Bay Area of San Francisco 10 years prior to that. And they heard about it, and it certainly sounds like the most Vermont thing that could possibly happen, right? So they started in Burlington and then got some backing from United Way and Cathedral Square. We were able to hire, after a couple of years, a director and expanded to all of Chittenden, and then eventually Addison County, Franklin, and Grand Isle. So we had a move in Western Vermont. There was a program in Washington and Orange County that lasted for about 10 years. And then in 2019, it went under. It's very difficult for these programs to get started, or it's even more difficult to sustain themselves. And so when those three counties went under, the state came to us and asked us to take over Central Vermont. And then about 2 years ago, we expanded into most of Windsor County with the help of this senior center that was operating a very small program in Woodstock. And then we also expanded into a few towns up in the NEK and in Rutland County. What's happening now, the most recent budget from the state, we were approved to expand to all of the Northeast Kingdom, the rest of Windsor County, and all of Windham County. So the next time you see this map, the only thing white will be Rutland and Bennington counties, which we hope to expand to in a few years. And we're doing those expansions much like the model in Windsor County, where we're able to partner with the Council on Aging in the NEK and the Housing Trust in Windham and Windsor. So it's pretty exciting. Right now, we have more matches than we've ever had. 90 matches, and I know of at least 4 right here in Williston. As a matter of fact, we have a brand new video, and 2 of the 3 match stories are Williston home shares. And so we can go on to the next slide.
Is 90 a year or 90? Because some of these relationships are multi-year.
That's right. Yeah. So that's 90 at point in time. So during the course
Vicky
of the year.
And Reg don't live here.
What's that?
Vicky and Reg don't live here anymore.
No, I know. That's right. Yeah. We. I mean, when it's a great shot like that, especially with pets, it's hard for us to. You'll know probably. Let's see. Well, Nancy Stone. I have a quote from her, and she's in our video, in the new video. So let's talk about what we do, because we have a very specific process, and we like to say, it's very methodical, it's very purposeful, and you can also read that as it's very slow. It takes time. There's an application first, for which there's no fee. So again, we're trying to remove barriers to people becoming home share hosts and guests. So there's no fee to apply. Once we get an application, we do background and reference checks. And then a case manager will reach out to the host or guest. If it's a host, they'll go to the home. Well, their home, the guest, it can be in our office or over the phone. And so that initial intake period is going to take about 2 weeks of doing background reference checks, interviews, and then we start to try to find what would be a compatible match for this host and for this, or any guest. And we have case managers as well as we have volunteers, staff volunteers who get together once a week and try to figure out who might be a good match. And as we figure that out, we'll call the host, let them know possible guests for them, and vice versa, tell them everything we've learned, and see if they'd like to meet. If they would, we set up an introduction with a case manager present. And then we ask more questions, get a conversation going, and see what they think of each other. We check back afterwards, not at the introduction itself, and see if they want to move forward to the next step, which is a 2-week trial period. This is where a guest moves in likely, we like to say, with a suitcase rather than a U-Haul. And it gives both a chance to see if this is the right match for them, or if home sharing is for them at all. It's a brilliant idea. It's not always for everybody. And sometimes during that trial period, they get a sense of this might not be for me. After the 2 week, or as we get to the end of the 2-week trial period, we check in again, see if they want to move forward and make it a formal match. About 90 to 95% of those trials become matches. And when they do, we draw up a match agreement. And in there will be what the rent will be, what the help will be, about how many hours a week that is. We put in there what the rules of the house are. So, can I have pets? Is smoking allowed? Is cannabis use allowed? Can I bring friends over? Can they be overnight guests? Can they be overnight romantic guests? We have a lot of questions we ask hosts and guests. We've had 43 years to think them up. So we have a long list.
Error along the way.
That's right. That's right. But they're good things to discuss up front and to have as part of the match agreement. And then for as long as the match goes on, there's ongoing support. So at any point, a host or a guest can call their case manager and ask for help. Maybe something has changed and they just need to have a discussion or figure out how to have the discussion. And the match agreement can change. If more help is now needed and so less rent is going to be asked for, that can change an agreement. If all of a sudden my host says it's all right to bring a dog over, a few times a week, we can add that to the match agreement. It's a very fluid document. The other thing is these matches go for as long as everyone's happy. So no one locks into a specific length of time. It's not a lease for a year or anything like that. What it is, though, in effect, is a month-to-month agreement. You have a 30-day notice on either side if you want it to end. Now, most go about a year to 5 years. The average right now is 2. We do have one match that's on 18 years. We have another one on 19 years. So sometimes we really get it right. We can go to the next slide. So there's certain things we'd like to say that home sharing is, and the number one reason people do come to us is for that safety aspect. We do 6 background checks and 3 reference checks. If they're a guest, we usually do a 4th if there's a landlord reference check that we can do. As I mentioned, we do the interview and the introduction. This is a really neat home share match in Heinsberg. The gentleman in the middle, that's the son, Brian. His mom is Gail, and then they're kind of neat because they lead the league in saying no. So at any point in this process, we call you up and say, we have an idea for a match. We tell you all about the person, and you can say no then. Or, okay, I'll meet the person. You meet them, and afterwards you say, nah, not quite a person. Or you go to the trial. And after, you do the 2-week trial and say, not necessarily our person. So they said no, I think 6 or 7 times. And then in walked Addison, who just happens to be, yes, from Addison County. So he's in education. Gail was in education. And they have had this wonderful rapport. As a matter of fact, if Brian walks into the kitchen and the two of them are talking about education, he turns around and leaves because he knows it's a 2-hour discussion that he'll never get involved in. The other thing is, so Gail has memory issues, and Brian was really concerned that if Addison brought friends over, 30 somethings over, it could be detrimental for Gail. Instead, she has engaged when they're there, and she gets involved in these discussions with these young people, and it's been really 3 years on this particular match. So, yep. So we also say it's helpful. I mentioned that your host can ask for rent or help or the combination of the two. So the help that can be asked for is help around the house. It won't be home health care. So it can be running errands or driving someone to appointments. It can be cooking several times a week, helping with light cleaning, yard work, garden work, pet care, shoveling the snow, tech help, things like that. So it's up to 12 hours a week. And as I mentioned, the more help you ask for, then the less in rent you ask for. The average right now that our guests are providing in help is 7.5 hours a week. And of course, for the host, they're helping someone find a home at a very affordable price. I mentioned our process is slow. These two gentlemen they were one of the fastest ever, and that was the month it took to match them. Butch, there, a Navy veteran, had eyesight problems. It took him into the hospital and then to rehab, and he wasn't allowed to come home unless there was someone at the home who'd be there to look after him. And he waited, and then we found Mark, who was an Army veteran, and he had gone through a divorce in his early 60s, was living at a transitional facility for veterans over in Bradford, really wanted to live in a home again, and we were able to match these two in a month. And so Mark would cook, clean, drive Butch around, and of course make sure he did his rehab stuff. So that's a story. Not sorry, we are affordable. So as I mentioned, there's no fee to apply. There is a one-time fee if a match is made. It's based on income. It's a sliding scale from $60 to $500. If anyone needs to set up a program to pay the fee, we'll do that. If they can't pay the fee, we'll waive it. The important thing is that the match is made.
And who's paying this?
Each pays host and guest based on their own income, and it's one time. Yep. For the host, they save money on help. They can earn extra income through the rent they receive, and then for the guest, they find an affordable place to live. So we cap the rent at $650. A guest host can also ask for a share of utilities if needed. But as I mentioned, more help means usually less rent. So right now, 25% of our hosts ask for 0 rent. Just about 10 to 12 hours every week. Just having someone there to make sure they're okay, an overnight presence. So the average rent that our guests are paying right now is $360 a month. So figure about what, 1/4 the average one, maybe even less than 1/4 the average one bedroom apartment in Vermont. And we hear from a lot of our guests the fact that they couldn't find a place, or they couldn't find an affordable place, or they couldn't find something that wasn't, they use this term a lot, substandard housing, which, I've never in my life. What's that? Yeah, but
If the roof leaks.
right, or mold, or there's a lot of things that could be considered right substandard housing, and now they get to live in a home with someone else. These two, we had Tracy move here from Nebraska to take a job with Forest Parks and Recreation, and she had some housing through them, and then when the season started again, she had to move out, and we were able to find Jane over in Cabot. They've been together almost 3 years. They're both geeks, and they watch the same TV shows, and they finish each other's sentences as they're watching these shows, making comments. So they're a pretty neat match too. All right, what else are we? I think we're fun next.
Isn't there on the part 121 form for your taxes? Is there a special line?
Yeah, okay. All right, so now that's a great question. I'm going to tell you everything I know about taxes. You're probably still going to have questions, but that's all right. So, the rent that you receive from a home share is earned income, and that is needs to be claimed both federal and state, because that is earned income. So people who do home share should make sure that the rent they receive doesn't affect some benefits they might receive. Now, the state legislature several years back, to incentivize people to share their homes rather than rent, when you have property taxes and you need to provide your household income, if you're renting, you would have to include the renter's income. If you have a home share agreement, you do not. And so, in some instances, it is a savings. Might be minimal, but in some cases it might be actually substantial. But pretty brilliant thing that the state legislature did to incentivize home sharing. We try to make it as easy as possible. We find and screen potential matches. This is an important part. If you are looking for someone on your own, you kind of start from zero, right? We have at any given time at least 80 hosts and 80 guests who have already applied and we're working with trying to match. Now, they're not all in Williston or all in Chittenden County, but nonetheless, we'll be able to find someone possibly easier than you would. Not always. And if someone finds a match on their own, or a housing for themselves while they're working with us, and they call and say, I don't need you anymore, we honestly don't take it personally. That's part of, they found housing, that's the important thing. Or if it was a host, if they found someone to move in who can provide the help or the rent or whatever they needed, that's excellent. We don't get our nose out of joint about that. The important thing is some kind of a match. But we do have people we've already, interviewed and screened. The difficult part, we hear this a lot from people, is that, those background reference checks that are difficult to do on your own. We create the match agreement, and then, like I said before, we provide that ongoing support. So it is less to manage alone. I'll tell you about this. These are two of my favorites. So you've got Honey, has a home down in Quechee, and Kayla, who took her dream job switched careers, took her dream job with a nonprofit down in White River Junction, couldn't wait, starts looking for a place to live and cannot find anything that she can afford. So she was commuting an hour a day from her parents' home in Waterbury down to her job in White River Junction. Just 10 minutes away was Honey. And so Kayla applied with us, and we knew right away, oh, we've got the right person for you. These two, you'd think they were mother and daughter. You'd think they know each other, known each other their whole lives. They can't even look at each other without bursting into laughter. They make popcorn and watch a movie every Friday night, and share their days, at the end of each day. So it's pretty special that we were able to match those two. All right, let's see what we got next. I know we're going to get to fun here soon enough.
Popcorn is fun enough.
Yeah, it is fun.
Yeah.
I popped the popcorn for that photo all the time.
I feel like you need
It wasn't Friday night, so
I'll be back. I may,
that's all right.
for some reason it's. Okay. So share. Yeah. Sometimes.
I do the same. All right. So yeah, this is sometimes that aspect that gets a little lost is the fun part of the companionship. Our hosts and guests share meals together. They go on adventures. Number one adventure, of course, is going for maple creamies. But we have in our annual report, which I brought, we have this match that have taken dance lessons together. The host adopted dogs, so they went to dog obedience classes together. They go to farmers market. They go to concerts. They play games, puzzles. We like to say we make a match, you make a friend. So these two, it's Shirley and Beth. And Shirley just turned 99. Monday nights, they hop into Shirley's VW Beetle, 2006 Beetle there, called Petunia, and they go play bingo together. I think it's at the point now where Beth actually drives the car. But the rest of the week, they've got matching recliners, went at the TV set, and so after dinner, it's Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune and reality shows. But for Shirley, she has a 2-bedroom condominium, 6 adult children, and the 6 adult children were coming for a week at a time in a 6-week rotation. Yeah. And so after a few years, they learned about home share and they asked their mom if she'd consider it. So she had a gentleman for a year, and then when he left, we found Beth, and they've been together for 3 years. And she calls Beth her 7th child. And for the kids, first of all, they don't have to be on that 6-week cycle, but they also have someone there they can call and check on their mom if they don't think they're, she's telling them how everything's going. But she also heads to Florida once a year in the spring, and then Beth is there taking care of the home. So, all right, what do we got next? So it's also for everyone. There's no age or income restrictions, and this is really important. People worry about that or think that, for instance, the hosts have to be retired, and that's not true at all. You can see our hosts range in age from 27 to 99, now 100. She turned 100 yesterday or this past week. I know the average age is 72. For the guests, it's 22 to 81 with the average age of 49. And we have a lot of people coming right out of college or maybe grad school or moving here for grad school. But you also have people who are changing jobs, moving elsewhere in the state, or people who, like Mark, going through divorce, something changes in their lives. We've had several people who have moved back to Vermont to be close to a loved one. Usually children and grandchildren they want to be close to, but I took a call today from a woman in California. Her brother has cancer and she wants to move back to be near him. And so she learned about us and thought this would be a great option for her to find an affordable place to live nearby where he is and be able to see him and take care of him and even take care of someone else. You know, she's like, I can't do full time. It's like, well, the maximum was 10 to 12 hours a week. Oh, that, oh God, you know, it's a few hours a day in effect at maximum that the guest would provide for the home. You can also see how we benefit those with low income and with disabilities as well. So one of my jobs is once a year, which I'm doing right now. I send out surveys to everyone who's in a match as of April 1st, so we can find out how we're doing. And in this survey for over 20 years now, 95% or higher have said that they were satisfied or very satisfied with home share. As a matter of fact, so far this year, 100% have said that. Another question we ask is, would you recommend home sharing to a family member or friend? And through the 20 plus years, 100% have said yes to that question. But we also want to know, you know, what effect home sharing has had on our hosts. And you can see people feel safer, they're happier, they eat better, they sleep better, they worry less about money, they call on their adult children less for help, they get out in their community more, see their friends. So I think of those wonderful volunteers who started this program. And it's a great idea, but I'm not sure they would have thought of these wonderful knock-on effects that this will have on hosts and sharers. So Nancy from here in Williston, who writes some wonderful poetry, wrote this line to me. It's about home sharing. She said, "Each a different story, each a deeply rewarding relationship." Here are two gentlemen. We have Randy, who loves Scooby-Doo, has some developmental disabilities, has a condominium, and wasn't really great at cleaning, wasn't really great at eating healthy. And then we found Sunwar, who talked about living in substandard housing. That was his story. He's originally from Nepal and was living in New York, moved to Vermont, was not living in a great place, and came to us, and we were able to match these two. So Sunwar has helped Randy clean his apartment, but he also cooks for him every night. So Randy used to have nothing but frozen food. And now the freezer is virtually empty. It's fresh food just about every night. He even eats Nepalese food. Doesn't like it all the time, but that's a home share match that's been going on for 2 years now. So it's pretty special too. And then this is just how people can learn more or support us. But we're always available 8:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday for people to call with questions. A lot of times, so you should know, I do outreach and communications, but we're a small nonprofit, so I'm also the receptionist. So I take the phone calls, and just about every week I get a few that start with, "I'm not sure that you would that this would work, that what you do," and usually it does. People come to us with all kinds of different situations, and what we do is then try to find the match that would work for them, whether it's the host calling us, the guest. Now, the woman who moved back here from Alaska with 13 sled dogs, we never did find her match, even though she was so confident we would. And this is an important point to make. Not everyone who applies with us, we're not going to find a match for every one of them. Right? Sometimes they find them on their own, but generally it takes usually about 2 to 6 months to find a match for someone. Especially guests might be on a much tighter timeline, right? And so it's important that right up front we tell people that we can't guarantee that we'll find you a match. So keep looking in every possible place because, as I mentioned, if they find it on their own, that's not a problem at all. We'd like to make a match for everybody who applies to us. That's not always possible. If the guests with pets are going to be harder to place. Guests who smoke are going to be harder to place, or hosts who smoke are going to be harder to find a guest for. Not impossible. The minimum requirement that a host needs to provide is a private room, a shared or private bath, shared common areas. So at times they'll have an ADU or separate apartment of some sort, and then they might be able to house a couple or a family, but most of the situations are going to be a single guest. So again, we work with people to try to find the solution for them, but it's not always guaranteed. Sometimes we get crazy requests. Farm workers, Oil County need to be close to the hospital in Morrisville 3 months, from 3 months before they gave birth till 3 months after. And we just happen to work with someone in Morrisville who says yes to situations like that and did. And so you just don't know, right? I swear I sit at my desk sometimes and think, come on, is this real? And then I go out, I talk to people, or I hear a story like that, and it's amazing what can happen. Doesn't always, but we're not great at certain things. We're not great, if it's like refugee community, because they might come here without a social security number, and so it makes it more difficult to do full background and reference checks. So we'll work with them, but when we talk to a host, we have to say, this is what we were able to do as far as background and reference checks. We're not great necessarily with the unhoused community. That's a little more difficult. Usually it's more of an emergency situation. And as I mentioned, we're slow and for good reason, but it also, makes us not as great in certain situations. So we work with whomever applies and do our best, but we're not going to be ever at 100%. I would say, looking at our numbers, it's generally about a quarter to about a third of everyone who applies who will be matched. And a lot of those, are people who just drop out. They apply and then learn more about the program and say that's not necessarily for me, or they find something else on their own. So we have some of that. So please, questions, comments?
You said you have 90 matches that are active right now.
Yep.
And you have 80 people waiting to be hosts, and around that same number of people waiting to be matched. That seems like not a great ratio. Like having 80 people waiting seems like a high number.
Yeah, but you don't know where they are. Like, they could be brand new applicants, right? And that, yeah, I know. I say to the case managers, come on, 80. We got 80 new matches right there. But yeah, some are going to be more difficult. They might have a dog or two, and depending on where someone is. For instance, in more rural areas, we tend to get more hosts and less guests, right? And you wish you could convince someone that, you know, Eden's not that far, but, thanks.
Where are you?
But, you know, you do have a lot of low income applicants on the guest side who might not have transportation, right? And so they need to be on the bus line. So that's a need that can't always be rectified. A host who lives, you know, almost off the grid or on a class 4 road needs a guest who, one, is comfortable with that, has a SUVI, right, has their own transportation, has transportation that can get back and forth on that kind of that kind of situation. You know, but for the person who wants to go out their back door and snowshoe and cross country ski, right? That's Eden. You know, not to throw another Vermont town out there. That's it. But anyway, so yeah, it's very fluid. You know, you're always working to make matches. You know, there's introductions going on, there's trials going on, and then there's matches, and all matches end. You know, you make 4 today, and next week, you know, 3 end, just because, right? Maybe the host, their needs became greater, had to move into a care facility, or you know, they decide they don't want a home share anymore, and that's fair. We also have, you know, the loss of hosts who pass away. And a lot of people ask that question, you know, what happens then? And the family, you know, per the agreement, the minimum requirement for them would be to provide 30 days. We have found most will say, well, we'd rather have somebody in the house if they don't mind staying longer. We had one gentleman passed away up in Milton, and the family asked the guests to stay because they were going to do work to the home. They're going to have people in and out, and they wanted somebody there. They wanted the house occupied. And he wound up staying another year and a half until it was all set, and the family said, you know, I think they gave him ample time to find another place. So, yeah, I know. I wish we made them more quickly and made more of them, but the process makes it, you know, somewhat difficult. So, it's a great question.
So I know Nancy quite well.
Yeah.
Actually, Ken was one of my best friends, and they had rented a room independently, and it didn't work out well for them.
Yeah.
Are they on their 3rd home?
They are. Yeah.
And Nancy is just bubbling with enthusiasm for how well it has worked for her.
Yeah, and this gentleman moved in as Ken was really failing, and within a month or 2 of him moving in, Ken passed, and so Nancy has really been happy to have her home share guests there to kind of help her through, which has been pretty difficult. And I think he's been there now 7 or 8 months.
The one she had before that was there for a couple of years.
Yeah, very well. Yeah,
And she's been alone in the house because Ken was often
right.
there.
That's right.
So having somebody in the house with her, I think, is very comforting to her.
Yeah, it really is. So.
I know a young woman with Down syndrome who just got met.
Oh yeah.
Very happy. Had an apartment.
Yeah.
Got someone in.
Yeah.
Work. So how many staff are there?
Oh, we're huge. So we have 7.5 staff, 7 full time, and then we actually share a staff member with the senior center in Windsor, and then we have 8 staff volunteers. 7 who help make matches, and then 1 who does reference calls. So, yeah, that's why in these new areas that we'll be expanding to, we'll be partnering, because we just couldn't cover,
Yeah.
you know, that much area. Yeah, we're pretty small and nimble.
And how can, like, how could the housing committee partner with you? What could?
Yeah, so, 1, I'll leave information, for you to have, you know, that can be, I don't know, we put in town hall, you know, libraries, which is really important. But referrals, are really the most important thing. You know, if you, know of anyone who this might benefit, refer them to us. And again, there's never a guarantee that, we're the right option for someone, but we are an option. And you know, so many people who call thinking about it say, look, there's no fee, and now you put us to work trying to find that match and to see if this might be the right thing. So it's kind of a low commitment on anybody who applies. But as I mentioned before to you all about your outreach, this is the most important thing I can do, is to, you know, let each one of you know exactly what home sharing is all about, so that as you find someone, you know, this might be an option for them. Think about this. You're all talking about, you know, housing, building housing, what it might take, right? The cost of Home Share Vermont, 90 units of housing did not have to be built. Now multiply what a unit of housing costs in this state. Okay, so that's not been expended, right? Or the energy to build those. 90 people have found affordable housing, 90 plus, because sometimes it's more. And then 90 people have been able to stay in their home or get help, get additional funding, make a friend. So the effects are pretty great, right? And the I have information too on the return of investment from the state. You know, it's a very low figure that the state provides for each match that's made during the course of the year. So, yeah.
Yep, in addition to that, the house is already heated. So whatever heat source you're using, you're not increasing for more people, but some of the changes are probably pretty slight.
That's right.
So savings that you're more hidden than
Yeah.
just a room.
I got two nice jobs.
Where do you,
You go on the road, man.
where do you mostly do outreach?
So, okay. Civic organizations, churches. I go to, gosh, who am I going to be seeing in the next few weeks? Any kind of event that's going on. Saturday, I'll be in St. Albans for their Pride event. Sunday, I'll be in East Craftsbury to talk at the Presbyterian Church there, and then afterwards have lunch with their housing committee. So a few weeks ago, East Randolph, they had a jubilee, and we were able to table there. Social workers, key one for us to talk to, and maybe for you as well, because they'll be tapped in, you know, working with clients who would have housing problems, right? And so if they will have me in, you know, present for them. So yeah, anybody who will say yes, but
So Debbie, for your month as speaker chair, you're gonna try to get Rick as a speaker?
You're on mute. You're on mute.
You're muted.
She said, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
I'm exploring my options. I will definitely put you on the list, Eric.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi there. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, we're in Rotary together, so.
So I was at, as a matter of fact, your Rotary was one of the first outreach I did when I started 2.5 years ago. So, but it's been 2.5 years, so
We got a lot of
it's
new
about time I come back, yeah. But yeah, I remember having to to talk to you. I was pretty green then. My presentation wasn't as. So.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments, observations?
Great, well, thank you.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you for coming.
Sure. Yeah.
This has been great.
I'm a fine.
What's that?
You could speak to our
Parents group,
parents.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, developmental disability.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
they're very active group.
Yeah.
Talk about networking that group.
Yeah, it's funny, there was a group I spoke to in the early days, and it was, there was 3 UVM medical, and it was a group that had very specific, chronic, respiratory illness, and, you just never know, right, where that will bear fruit, and about a year later, they said, yeah, Rick talked to us. And they became hosts over in Grand Isle. So, yeah, it was, just a Zoom, my early days, and they learned about it, remembered it when they needed it. Yeah.
So I'm approaching the upper edges of middle age. And as you do that, you think about what the future might be. And I think about wanting to stay alive so that I can take care of my wife. Should we be filling out an application now, knowing that we don't want anybody now, so that all that research is done?
So, no, probably not, unless you're, if you were looking several months down the road, 3 or 4, or maybe 5 months down the road, yeah.
That far ahead.
Yeah, the thing is, if you applied now and then after a year, you'd have to basically reapply.
Okay.
Because of the background of reference checks, we can't trust it. And that's,
What'd you do in between? That's right.
and that's the truth.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm bad.
You get a
So
year,
wait till you're within a year.
so
Okay.
hold off, we'll be there. I always say that we've waited 43 years for you, we'll wait longer, we'll be ready. Yeah. Good question, though.
Well, thanks, Rick. I appreciate you taking the time to come
Yeah.
and talk to us, and it's been very useful for me. Fall workshop planning. We talked last month about having a workshop on all of these things.
Was Paul, we're talking about ADUs,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, it was specifically ADUs.
ADUs and
Yeah.
infill.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, infill for small property owners. And do you wanna just set a tentative date for this? And then that would,
Push us.
yeah. And I'm thinking, sometime like end of fall foliage season, like, beginning of
October, mid to late October.
late October, maybe, mid to late October. That sounds.
Yeah, I think it sounds good. I mean, then you can't push it too much into November because
Yeah,
but you have like this 3-week window
Yeah.
there.
yeah, it's, so that would be, give you July, August, September, and the first meeting in October, so that would give you about 4 meetings to kind
Mhm.
of prepare. Plus, plus what staff does on the off time. So,
Are there any other town events?
plan then?
Yeah.
Not to my knowledge, last fall at that time, we were doing our whole town plan push.
Yeah.
But, yeah, not that I'm aware of. So, like, you could do it during the week, like, actually, let's look at the calendar, see.
I was trying to mentally calculate.
So like. October. If you wanted to do it like on a Wednesday night, if you wanted to do it like. We do it
22.
the 22nd,
Halloween.
or, yeah, 22nd might be the day. would be a good time to do it.
We
The-
probably want to,
the-
go ahead.
Sorry, the 29th is the fifth Wednesday, so we probably would avoid having any other like regular things that.
Oh, yeah, true.
uh,
You could do that if 2 days before Halloween isn't too much
Prep work.
pressure, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, 22nd works for me too, but
yeah,
29th 29th is easy to decorate for.
so why don't, yeah, we could shoot for the 29th, and as a backup, the 22nd, I could, if we did it we could do it at either the library community room, which is a nice place to have workshops. It holds about 20 or so people.
Well, Shelburne had how many at theirs?
Yeah.
I know, they had a lot, so we could.
Or they offered pizza.
Or we could do it at town hall.
It's everybody.
Yeah,
Or we could do it at the rec zone, although it's the sound quality.
yeah, that's,
But yeah, I mean, we could do something at
Mhm.
town hall. But yeah, I could kind of work on. Figuring out an event space to have it, and that would be like. Step number one, a date, a place. And then, kind of figuring out, how you wanna, I guess, like, who you wanna invite to participate. I'll put my 2 cents in here. I've been intrigued by that company, New Frameworks, because they do these like small houses and stuff, and
mhm.
they came to the Shelburne one, they didn't really participate, per se, but. I don't know, it might be kind of cool, but, and of course, town staff, the planning staff could participate as far as. Just presenting on what the permit requirements are for different scenarios. And I think folks here. are pretty
Debbie
psyched.
got some people, didn't Debbie talk to some people?
yeah,
Ready?
there were like 3 people who were willing to share their stories.
That's
Well,
right, yeah, so.
Yeah.
So the homeowner side of it and.
Yeah.
And so you kind of reaching back out to those folks and just maybe asking them more specifically, hey, we're thinking about doing a big workshop on this date. Are you willing to participate? So even if we got like a homeowner, that'd be great,
Mhm.
And then, I don't know, who else?
I can,
what about like somebody from either an engineering firm, like they could talk about, if you want to talk about people who are outside the water sewer district, they could,
Yeah,
like Trudell, somebody from Trudell, or for instance. And then also, I mean, like I looked into kind of manufactured housing, maybe somebody from one of the manufactured, uh, like I forget what. There's several in Vermont.
well, that's kind of what New Frameworks does in a sense, is they manufacture homes, and they're supposedly really like energy efficient and inexpensive, relatively inexpensive.
there's
But,
a guy that does the wheel pad
The
too.
wheel pad,
Yeah.
the wheel pad.
I can contact him.
And then what about trying to get somebody from ACCD to talk about the home improvement program? I think they were invited to Shelburne's, but they didn't show up, or they couldn't, I don't know, they had to cancel the
What
last.
is ACCD?
Agency of Commerce and Community Development.
Yeah, yeah.
But I know Alex Farrell. He's the commissioner.
Oh, yeah,
He did my series on Tummy TV, so I'm sure I could
Right.
get Alex to come. He just lives in South Burlington, so yeah.
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
There, okay, it's all planned and ready to go.
The only thing I
Yeah.
want- Does the amount of housing on outside of sewer and water isn't the new thing is that you can have 5 units per acre or whatever that.
Not outside sewer and
It's
water,
not outside sewer.
No.
Yeah,
no, but
so do we wanna address that anyhow, or not?
well, I mean, I think it's still. Like valuable for folks living out in the rural part of
Right.
town. They still wanna, like Debbie here. Still wants to, some of them still live on small lots,
Yeah,
or smallish lots and wanna build an ADU, so you can
Right.
always you always have the right to build an ADU. No matter what the size your lot is.
yes,
If you have the sewer capacity for it.
If you have the, right, if you have the sewer
Septic.
capacity.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
if you're outside sewer, you need the septic
Yeah,
and the well and the in your well capacity. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, having somebody there to just. I don't know, not get too far into the weeds, but to just talk about, some of the challenges and like. Of these on-site systems and kind of the process for, and the,
requirements
you
and
know, sort
stuff,
of
yeah.
the processing, the cost of, developing a system or retrofitting a system.
Has the Regional Planning Commission done much on ADUs here?
Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission,
Yeah,
I mean, not really, it doesn't really seem to be their focus, but they have, two other regional, so now Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. And Addison Regional Planning Commission did like a guide.
Yeah,
which was really
it's
nice.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
I've done presentations with them,
Yeah,
and I refer people to that. I was just gonna suggest,
definitely,
if you don't have somebody here, then they'd be great to
yeah,
have, if you don't mind bringing them in from outside, but they really do. It's a phenomenal piece for people, considering ADUs, so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I wonder too if it makes sense to have some kind of, background meeting and then have breakout units. Cause it might be useful to have a town person with all the maps and you could say, I live at this address, how subdividable is, how much wetlands do I have?
mhm,
Those kinds of things. To your point about the density thing, the folks that are in
mhm.
on water and sewage may not understand how subdividable their lots are.
Yeah, I mean, it seems almost like. The. The scope is expanding, so it may be
Mhm.
like. Initially, we sort of like talked about a several part. So you might start out
Right.
fairly focused,
Mhm.
and then if folks want more. You could sort of expand or kind of do something different the next workshop.
Yeah,
But I think, you know. Should be, yeah, sort of cognizant of time limits and then decide whether you want this to be sort of like a presentation type workshop of Q&A, or whether you want it to be more.
Defense.
More like sort of hands-on and break out into groups and kind of do that, yeah, more sort of active hands-on. But yeah, and I don't know. It might be better to do like a more engaging hands-on workshop the second time around after like,
Sort of baseline.
the basic facts, I don't know, but
Yeah, the only place where I've kind of flipped my thinking and talking with some different like sort of parents and they have kids in the area. If you own a house and that's kind of all you have, if you have an ADU, like you would have to take a loan out, right, to build an ADU for your kids to live in. And families can sort that out. But if you can subdivide a lot and the kids are kids are working too, then they can get their own loan for that lot and for the house. Because an ADU is several $100,000. So
Right.
I mean, not a lot of our homeowners can probably be like, okay, I can throw in $300,000 on my land so my kids can live here. But they might be able to subdivide and the kids can
Right.
use their own credit to fund this other thing. So I'm actually getting more optimistic about subdividing. Yeah,
There is VHIC funding for ADUs.
right, yeah.
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 With
Yeah, that's
grants
what-
and loans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one of the drawbacks to those they were taxable, which is unfortunate. It'd be nice if the legislature would work on that. That they would make them more attractive if they weren't taxable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's a good point, Lisa, that you were bringing up because I explored that too because I wanted to do the ADU for my niece and it's like, yeah, would it be better? Because I mean, it's like for me to get embroiled in like having a new mortgage, at my age, it's like I'd rather she have to,
Right.
have we subdivide and have her assume the credit. Yeah.
But if you subdivide, then it stops being an ADU and becomes a residence, so.
Right.
So a new set of requirements.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true.
So we have a lot of subdividable lots in Williston, so I think that,
Yeah, so
that infilling thing.
Yeah, if you kind of focus it on a workshop on infill and then just kind of, so what does that mean? I mean,
Right.
ADUs, it could be a small subdivision, kind of explain that, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that might be the good first meeting, like intro, like baseline. If you're gonna talk about this, you need to understand, an ADU versus subdividing versus being on water and sewer versus
Yeah,
living in a septic system.
yeah,
Those are the big concepts.
yeah.
So we're set, the primary date is October 29th. And if it looks like that's not going to work out, then the backup date is the 22nd. And we have we've talked about manufactured homes and town staff talking about requirements and some homeowner stories and perhaps engineering and ACCD and looking into the future of having another session that gets to talk more specifically about particular lot types and problems and issues. Is there anything else?
I'll see if I can
Yeah, it sounds like we
develop
gotta like
a little of
the horses.
bit of a framework for this and maybe I can bring it back the following meeting and
Yeah.
refine it a little bit. That makes sense. And if, if you have ideas you wanna throw my way, feel free. We can kind of begin to refine this.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's listed.
There's a lot.
10 things.
Yeah. So maybe not all that
Might
stuff.
be more than you want to put in
Yeah.
one session.
Yeah.
Anything else? Then is there any other business? I see we're to elect a chair and vice chair for the year that begins
Next
July
meeting.
1st. This is my last meeting. I've reached the point that I think it's time to go on and do other things and have one less time conflict. And it's been a real pleasure to work with all of you. I feel so grateful that our town has such a wonderful resources that I've been on the three town housing committees and we've been together now for 4 years and I feel like with the accomplishments that we've made, it's a good time for me to move on. So I've given my resignation letters. And thank you all for having accepted all this time. So
thank you.
now, who
Right.
do you want to be? Who do you want to be chairman?
And thank you, Charlie.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you,
thank you, Charlie.
Pleasure.
Absolutely.
Good.
So, do we have any?
Well, Debbie is our
any
best,
volunteers?
Debbie is our best meeting runner ever, so.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
Lisa, would you like to be the new chair?
Well, I can certainly do it if you're not raising your hand for that.
Yeah,
But you know you're the meeting queen when you say, oh, there's 5 Wednesdays in October, so let's pick the 5th one. You know, you've done a few meetings in your day, right? You're a whole level beyond me, but I'm happy to chair. If
Yeah,
no one
that would
else
be
is raising their hand.
that would be awesome. I'd be your vice chair again if
Okay,
you
there
want
you go.
backup.
Okay, that sounds good.
So does it work for all of you to have Lisa as your chairman and Debbie as your vice chair?
I might have to sleep on
No, it's fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay, your meeting.
It's my meeting, okay.
Actually, I could stay until July 1st, but yeah.
I guess all we have is, what is town plan public hearing scheduled for July 15th? What's that about?
So the select board is holding public hearings on the town plan. The first one is scheduled for July 15th. And the second one is scheduled for August 19th. So in case you're like dying to come and hear more about the town plan.
Are they upstairs or are they off in the library somewhere?
They're upstairs, yeah, upstairs in the town hall. But yeah, the staff, we feel pretty good about how the town plan has turned out. I mean, it's basically there. We've gotta, put some pictures in there, some more pictures and do some formatting stuff, but, it's been a long, like we started this thing 2.5 years ago and it's finally, like I can say, pretty near complete, so that feels pretty good. Yeah.
I think it's great work. I mean, I've certainly read it.
Yeah,
So, yeah, and it's a direction I'd love to see the town, so
Uh-huh.
it goes, so there's a lot in there.
Well, that's a good sign then.
a lot of aspirations.
Yeah, there's a lot of goals and aspirations. And then I would encourage you to spread the word about the housing committee and recruit. I thought of even asking, reaching out to Jeff Fairs and seeing if he's had enough of a break from being on the select board for.
Oh, that's a good
17
idea.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, reach, so maybe I will do that.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, if you wanna reach out to
Just
the
as
person,
Willoughby was percentage.
that would be much appreciated.
All right.
Our next, so I guess our next meeting would be the 2nd of July. Is anybody else feeling sort of overloaded that week, being the 4th of July week, or is that just me?
On this, on the Wednesday.
That would have been one of my conflicts if I'd still been on.
Yeah,
Yeah, and since you're now down to 4. It's pretty much if somebody's got a conflict, we don't have a quorum. So, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I could do it. Never
Yeah.
mind. I won't tell you all my personal woes. But I could do it on the 2nd if I mean that is our regular night, if that still works for everybody.
well, I could push it a week too, as well. I mean, we have house guests. It is a busy week, but
Yeah,
I was gonna leave them.
It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I mean the 9th would work better for me, honestly.
I can't do it the night because energy committee meets the 2nd.
Oh, so if we
Okay.
change, if we had to change,
You
we
could
go
do it, you could do it the 3rd week if that works for you.
the 16th.
July
yeah,
6th.
that would work for me, actually.
Yeah,
What do you think, Michaela?
I'm equally free, all three.
Yeah, okay. All right, so July
next
16th.
meeting, July 16th.
Great, thank you.
What are you gonna be doing that night?
Town band.
Yeah,
He's.
Oh, yeah, Wednesdays.
We'll come over.
It'll be a concert night.
All right, so. If there's nothing else, should we adjourn? All in favor?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
right.
We have to vote.
I don't know, on the, yeah, on the board we do, on the DRB we do, but
Thank you.
All right, see you later, Debbie.
See you soon,
Yep.
Debbie.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, you got stuff.
I have a few things, so